I'm Evan J. Peterson, and this is an excerpt from my forthcoming novel, Better Living Through Alchemy, due out in early 2024 from Broken Eye Books. It was absolutely horrible. The victim was a Filipino man, mid-40s, identified by some of the other patrons as Daniel Gomez. None of them claimed to know him well. The general consensus was that Gomez was very private. He was an accountant, upwardly mobile, middle class, living in his condo just down the street. Luckily, there were witnesses, like the first incident at the Deep. The victims had less and less in common the more of them turned up. They did not live in the same cities, and they had differing age groups and genders and ethnicities. That suggested it was not a serial killer. The chlorine smell of the well-maintained bathhouse cut through the worst stench of death. It was tolerable, but Kelly could smell human insides, and goats, and spiders. The increasingly familiar scent of the Bardo drug was there as well, though Kelly still couldn't pin the psychic scent to anything she'd ever experienced. "How close can I get to the body?" she asked, stepping toward the corpse before getting permission. "About that close," Detective Aweke told her, stopping her after a couple of steps with a hand on her shoulder. "What's wrong with his eyes?" "His eyes?" "That's what I said, Aweke." "I'll get a closer look," he told her, holding her back with a palm against her chest. He approached the body, stepping gingerly around the tile rim of the hot tub. The victim was slumped on the stairs, his lap and legs in the water, his abdomen distended until his body cavity burst open. Guts spilled into the hot tub, floating around amidst a strange black foam. Aweke said that, Aweke used a sterile dowel to lift each eyelid and return them to their half-closed death glare. "His eyes are all fucked up. How did you notice that from over there?" "I was looking for it." "So the pupils are rectangular, right? Horizontal? That's how it looks from here." Aweke handed the dowel off to an evidence collector. Yeah. Like a goat?" Aweke looked to be lost in memory. Yeah, like a goat." "And the shredded abdomen? Looks like something inside came out, not like someone cut their way in." Kelly stared at the black foam drifting around the flotsam of the dead man's entrails. "Has anyone checked the tub? Because if something came out of him, it might very well still be in there, alive." Aweke took a step back. "Yeah, well, I don't want to fuck around and find out. I'll get animal control in here." Before he could call in the dog catcher, some of the foam cleared, enough to present a different material floating amidst the grue. "What's that?" Kelly pointed at a cluster of slick black orbs. They weren't bubbles, but they floated. There were sharp parts, too, with a membrane stretching between them as opaque as the spheres. Aweke said, "Not sure I want to find out." Kelly inhaled deeply. The mix of scents made her gag, but she got some new impressions. Mermaid purses. "I'm sorry again?" Aweke looked at her as though she spoke nonsense. "Mermaid purses, like shark eggs. These are clutches of eggs. I can smell something in them, not alive exactly, but growing. Smells like goats and spiders and something else. Not fish." "Okay, then we definitely need animal control in here, and a biohazard team, and..." A sound somewhere between a pop and a crack echoed in the room. A tiny splash followed, and more popping sounds. The hot tub churned with alchemical life as grotesque little animals broke the surface. Neither Kelly nor Oweke said a word. They watched it in frozen horror as the things writhed toward the dead man's body, swarming it. Something insectoid mixed with something mammalian. The room got warmer as the hatchlings emerged from the tub. "It's a nest," Kelly shouted. "The whole room is a nest!" Oweke shouted, and Kelly saw that one of the little monsters was on him. It jumped onto her hip and stared at her. It was a perverse little thing, no bigger than a billiard ball and with too many spindly black legs. Its head was like a baby goat's, but with too many eyes. Those eyes looked right at her, and the thing screamed and made a lunge toward her face. She swatted it away with her cane. More of the things emerged from the black foam, most of them moving toward the corpse, feasting on it. "Run! Just fucking run!" Oweke said, grabbing her hand. They always told her to run, as if the thought never occurred to her. He pulled her into a hallway and practically dragged her as she hopped behind him. Realizing that she couldn't keep up, Oweke lifted her and put her over his shoulder, remarkably strong for such a thin man. His shoulder mashed into her belly, hurting her bladder. He finally set her down in a small labyrinth of wooden panels and partitions. When she caught her breath, she said, thanks." Oweke still panted, leaning forward with his head down and hands on his knees. "Don't mention it. Now what?" Kelly shook her head incredulously. "You're the cop. I got nothing." "Nothing? No tricks, no charms, no spells? I thought you were a witch." "Who told you that?" "I'm an occult detective, not a witch. Witches have a religion. I just use their tools." "You forget your ancestors," he said, leaning and placing a palm flat against a wooden partition. Kelly laughed at him. When he asked why that was so funny, she informed him, "You're leaning on a glory hole." He didn't comprehend at first. Like in glass blowing? Then he caught on, jumping back from the wooden makeshift wall as if it were a hot stove. Oweke cautiously approached the lozenge-shaped hole in the partition. "Why is it oblong? Why not round?" "Different heights," Kelly told him. Oweke rolled his eyes as if to say, "How did I not think of that?" Instead, he asked, "How long do you think we have until those things make it to this part of the building?" Some men wearing only towels ran past, shrieking. "Not long," Kelly said. But Detective Oweke's awkward interaction with the glory hole gave her an idea. "Hey, do you know how to scry?" "What's that?" "It's a witchy thing. You do it with a hagstone or a crystal. A glory hole is not ideal, but it's what we have." Peering through the opening, she squinted until she saw dark energy churning. Blacks and charcoal grays swirled with deep, dark violet. There was enough delineation between the shades that she could see the strands of each color sucked downward, like watching water curl down a drain. It was enough of a lead. "We gotta move. We're heading down." She didn't wait for a response before stabbing her cane to the floor and shoving off toward a door that said, "Employees only." Oweke started after her. "Down? Down doesn't sound like an escape route to me." Kelly didn't even look back. "It's a natural energy sink down there. It's clearing out the bad shit." She was through the door. As she guessed, it was a staff stairwell, lit by a single red bulb in a safety cage on the wall. Oweke jogged up and closed the distance between them, a step or two behind her on the stairs. "Kelly, remember where we are. This place is right on top of a major steam line. If we get much lower, we'll be in the steam tunnels, and I for one do not want to die boiled alive." Kelly kept descending. "Do you want to die eaten by baby spider goats? Or giving traumatic birth to 1,000 monster eggs? I don't." One floor down, the stairs ended in another staff door. She pushed through. Aweke catching the door from behind her to hold it open. The smell hit her like a crow dive-bombing her face, and she felt faint for a moment. Aweke just ran the other way. It was an office space, lit garishly with fluorescent ceiling panels. The contrast between this light and the spooky red stairwell would have been disorienting enough if not for the beast. An abominable thing with too many limbs squatted in the middle of the room. It was hard to get a look at it. At first, Kelly thought it was the sudden flood of artificial light messing with her eyes, but after staring aghast for a few seconds, she realized the thing's body was partially liquid, or gaseous. The amorphous black lump of it would put out insectoid legs or feelers and retract others. It had a goat's head and neck, with smaller goat heads budding like warts from the elongated throat. From several slits in the belly, more black eggs oozed out, pooling around the abomination. In an almost comedic moment, it cocked its head to the side and looked as shocked to see Kelly as she was to see it. And then it screamed.